Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. This is Friday, the first day of August in the year of our Lord 2025. I will be talking about Gaza. What's going on in that narrow strip of land in which so many have died, so many are dying? Who or what is responsible for all that death and destruction? Is it really happening? Is it faked or just propaganda? This report is the result of my search for evidence that may reveal the truth. The President of the United States said recently that he did not agree with Bibi Netanyahu, who stated there is no starvation in Gaza. He said that everybody needs to step up, including the Israelis, to make sure food gets to the area. Quote, "We can save a lot of people. I mean, some of those kids, that's real starvation. I see it, and you can't fake that. So we are going to get even more involved," end quote. What exactly that statement means is unclear to me, but the president seems to be shifting his views, or perhaps he is evolving as more comes to light. The president then has accepted as fact that children are starving in Gaza, so who is responsible? What can be done about it? The Israeli population does not deny it, nor do they regard it as a curse, according to recent polls. Most Israeli citizens believe that the Israeli actions in Gaza are in response to the attacks of October 7th, 2023, in which some 1,200 Israeli civilians were killed, some 250 hostages were taken, about 50 of which are still unaccounted for. A letter recently went out from over 1,000 rabbis in which they abhorred the violence committed by Hamas. But they seem to admit that the Israeli response, to paraphrase the letter, is, well, overkill. Quote, "The killing of huge numbers of Palestinians in Gaza, including those seeking food, has been widely reported across respectable media and cannot reasonably be denied. The severe limitation placed on humanitarian relief in Gaza and the policy of withholding of food, water, and medical supplies from a needy civilian population contradict essential values of Judaism as we understand it," end quote. I interpret that letter, then, as an admission by the rabbis that the things mentioned are happening. Not everyone agrees, though. As I said, Mr. Netanyahu denies that any starvation is happening. The President of the United States has seen the videos of starving children and has undoubtedly been briefed by his various intelligence agencies and has become convinced that it is in fact happening. The picture, now viral or iconic, if you will, around the world, of the woman holding her baby with a diaper made from a plastic bag she found is a convincing one, but it has not convinced everyone. That picture has been analyzed by many and found lacking. Some see adults in the background. Some say they seem healthy and well fed. The Israelis say the baby is not starving at all, but has some sort of genetic disorder. So the picture is staged for sympathy, they say. I've looked at the picture many times. Excuse me, folks. I don't know about the genetic disorder. Perhaps that is so, but the baby is starving. That's obvious to me. Whatever other conditions he has does not change the fact that that baby is starving. The rabbi's letter seems to admit that these conditions are being intentionally caused by the Israeli government and its supporters. Death and destruction are the inevitable consequences of war, as we are well aware, but this seems to have reached an unusual level of inhumanity. Once again, we are told nothing's happening here, folks. Nothing happening here. You are not seeing this. Bombing, strafing, shelling are the definitions of war, but how about the intentional starvation of mass numbers of people to defeat Hamas? Is it necessary to destroy an entire people group to do that? People have to come to grips with the word genocide. That word is thrown around rather casually today, but I think most Jewish people understand it. They might remember it from stories of their ancestors as the Holocaust. The Holocaust lives in their collective memories, but they don't seem to equate what is being done to these Palestinians with what was done to their people 80 or 90 years ago. What Hitler and his Nazi party did to Jews and many other groups was accepted by the German people at the time, but today, anyone who condones such things is looked at as pure evil. The Germans did conduct mass starvation in order to eliminate people groups from certain lands they wanted for German settlers. Slavs, Eastern European Jews, along with other indigenous people, were systematically starved, and the survivors were shipped out so Germans could have their land. Does that sound familiar, folks? Because it is exactly what Israel is accused of today. In order to allow one's mind to accept such cruelty, the people being eliminated must be reduced to inhuman status, subhuman, as Hitler called them, or for the Palestinians, human vermin. How can any person who professes to know God make such judgments? I cannot understand that, but their hearts must be made of stone. The Old Testament passages of the Bible are sometimes used to justify it all. I'm no theologian, folks, as I keep saying, but I just don't get it. I read many American commentators daily who take the position that these things, first of all, are exaggerated. Second, they're caused by Hamas to bring international condemnation down on Israel. Commentators are people with a national audience, people who make millions of dollars by commenting on the news as I'm doing right now for free. Some people take vast leaps to favor Israel, always give the Israeli leadership the benefit of the doubt, while others are the opposite, blaming them for literally everything. Listen to Chris Hedges of the Hedges Report. Quote, Israelis have blinded themselves morally and intellectually. They view genocide through the lens of a bankrupt media and political class that tells them that what they want to know, shows them what they want to see. They believe that the extermination of a people, including children condemned as human contaminants, makes the world, especially their world, a happier and safer place. They are the heirs of Pol Pot, the killers that carried out the genocides in East Timor, Rwanda, and Bosnia, and yes, the Nazis. Israel, like all genocidal states, no population since World War II has been dispossessed and starved with such speed and ruthlessness as a final solution that would have earned the stamp of approval from Adolf Eichmann, end quote. I know that truth is very important. In this digital age, it is very rare and precious commodity indeed. Lying is a tactic used when the truth does not support your cause. Is the Israeli government responsible for the famine in Gaza? Or is Hamas responsible for the famine in Gaza? I admit it's really hard to get a firm grasp on the truth because the urge to see events for what your worldview wants them to be. Is your worldview that Israelis, and by extension all Jews worldwide, are monsters who are systematically starving to death 2.1 million people so they can have their little pile of rubble? Does that your worldview allow you to explain away as self-defense among many explanations whatever action the Israeli government takes? It is very difficult to know the truth for certain about anything. That's why a jury is required to find a criminally accused defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Is there reasonable doubt in this case where Israel is accused of perhaps the most horrible crime that one could imagine? The accusations against Israel are causing persecution and attacks against Jews around the world. Even here in the United States, pro-Palestinian people read stories of what is always described as genocide. They take revenge on Jews here in America who obviously had nothing to do with it. Those attacks fuel even more hatred by supporters of Israel, which then fuels more pro-Palestinian hatred. That is never-ending cycle of war. It's why wars have been raging in that part of the world for thousands of years. Hatred is passed on from generation to generation. All efforts to resolve the conflict just seem to make it worse. What does all this have to do with the United States? Why couldn't the U.S. just wash its collective hands a la Pontius Pilate and walk away? The U.S. could not walk away from this struggle with clean hands, no matter how many times it washed them. There are things that could be done to help. The U.S. has always been good at helping. Right now, it's busy helping its special ally conduct its foreign policy. I said it's virtually impossible to be sure of any facts about Gaza, but here is a fact that is incontrovertible. Israeli foreign policy is American foreign policy, since the U.S. is always there to conduct their policy by force. This could not happen without American assistance and American support. Israel conducts its attacks in Gaza, Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, with the full support of the American taxpayer. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, an organization I often rely on for who is funding what, says that the United States supplies 69% of Israel's weapons, virtually all of its fighter jets Israel uses to conduct its attacks. Germany supplies 30%. I trust you can see the irony in that, folks. In conclusion, I was ready to admit I could not form an opinion that did not have doubts. Then I saw Tucker Carlson's interview of Tony Aguilar. That man can be trusted, and he can be believed. So listen to a little of his story. He went to West Point, and he retired after 25 years as a combat infantry officer. He was trained in special forces, deployed 12 times to war zones, literally spent years in combat, was decorated many times, wounded in combat. In other words, he's seen the worst. He knows what it looks like. His wife, also a retired military officer, and he together have spent 45 years in the Army. He retired with the last day of service March 1st, 2025. In May, he was contacted and asked to go to Gaza to lead and report on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid program, which took over when the UN could not deliver the aid. He was so shaken by what he described as a post-apocalyptic world in Gaza, he and his wife decided he would go public and tell his story, not to profit, but just to get his story out. Just some of the things he reported seeing were enough for me. There are only 4 aid stations, he says, 4 aid stations for millions of people. There used to be 400. All 4 of the aid stations are in active IDF combat zones, which is a war crime in the internationally recognized rules for armed conflict. Machine guns and tanks firing into civilian crowds. Mostly it was just the starvation. He described the aid stations as death traps. Lieutenant Colonel Aguilar reminded us that the motto of the U.S. Special Forces is, quote, to free the oppressed, end quote. A motto he lived for 25 years. His conclusion is that the U.S. taxpayers are funding the killing and starving to death of tens of thousands of people in Gaza. He said it's worse than any of the combat zones he spent most of his life in. Finally, he pointed out that there aren't many things more Christian to us than feeding people. Finally, folks, finally, the pale horse is among us. At least that's the way I see it. Till next time, folks, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.